Good morning. It is October 7th, 2018 at 5:16 a.m. Pacific Time. And we are reading again out of Battlefield of the Mind book by Joyce Meyer in chapter 20. Don't make me wait for anything. I deserve everything immediately. Wilderness mentality number 5. This one fits with exactly what I'm going through right now. So be patient, brethren, as you wait till the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits expectantly for the precious harvest from the land. See how he keeps up his patient vigil over it until it receives the early and late rains. James 5:7. Impatience is the fruit of pride. A proud person cannot seem to wait for anything with the proper attitude. As we discussed in the previous chapter, patience is not the ability to wait. It is the ability to keep a good attitude while waiting. The scripture does not say, be patient if you wait. It says, be patient as you wait. Waiting is part of life. Many people don't wait well, and yet we actually spend more time in our lives waiting than we do receiving. What I mean is this: we ask God for something in prayer, believing, and then we wait and wait for the manifestation. When it arrives, we rejoice because we have finally received what we have been waiting for. However, because we are goal-oriented people who must always have something to press forward, something to look forward to, we go right back into the process of asking and believing God for something else and waiting some more until the next breakthrough comes. Thinking about this situation made me realize that I end up spending much more time in my life waiting than I do receiving. So I decided to learn to enjoy the waiting time, not just the receiving time. We need to learn to enjoy where we are while we are on our way to where we are going. Pride prevents patient waiting. For by the grace, unmerited favor of God given to me, I warn everyone among you not to estimate and think of himself more highly than he ought, not to have an exaggerated opinion of his own importance, but to rate his ability and sober judgment, each according to the degree of faith apportioned by God to him. Romans 12:3. It is impossible to enjoy waiting if you don't know how to wait patiently. Pride prevents patient waiting because a proud person thinks so highly of himself that he believes he should never be inconvenienced in any way. Although we are not thinking badly of ourselves, we are also not thinking too highly of ourselves. It is dangerous to lift ourselves up to such an elevated place that it causes us to look down on others. If they are not doing things the way we want or as quickly as we think they should be done, we behave impatiently. A humble person will not display an impatient attitude toward God or man. Be realistic. In the world, you have tribulation and trials and distress and frustration. But be of good cheer. Take courage. Be confident, certain, and undaunted. For I have overcome the world. I have deprived it of power to harm you and have conquered it for you. John 16:33. Another way that Satan uses our mind to lead us into impatient behavior is through thinking that is idealistic rather than realistic. If we get the idea in our heads that everything concerning us and our circumstances and relationships should always be perfect, no inconveniences, no hindrances, no unlovely people to deal with, then we are setting ourselves up for a fall. Or, actually, I should say that Satan is setting us up for a fall through wrong thinking. I am not suggesting that we be negative. I am a firm believer in positive attitudes and thoughts, but I am suggesting that we be realistic enough to realize ahead of time that very few things in life are ever perfect. In the early years of our ministry, my husband and I traveled almost every weekend to a different city to hold seminars. Many times we rented hotel ballrooms and civic or convention centers. In the beginning, I would get impatient and frustrated every time something went wrong in one of these places. Things like the air conditioning not working right, or perhaps not working at all, insufficient lighting in the conference room, chairs that were stained and ripped with the stuffing hanging out, or remains of the cake from the previous night's wedding reception still on the floor. I felt that we had paid good money for the use of these rooms and that we had rented them in good faith, expecting them to be in proper order. So I was irritated when that was not the case. We did everything we could try to ensure that the places we rented were clean and comfortable, and yet, in about 75% of them, something did not live up to our expectations. There were times when we had been promised early check-in for our travel team. Yet we would arrive and be told there would be no rooms available for several hours. Hotel employees often gave out wrong information concerning the times of our meetings, even though we had told them repeatedly and had even sent printed material to them, showing the exact dates and times. Frequently, hotel and banquet employees were rude and lazy. Many times, the food we had ordered for seminar luncheons was not what it was supposed to be. I remember one time in particular when the desserts served to our Christian women, approximately 800 of them, was laced with rum. The kitchen got the dishes mixed up with what was being served at a wedding reception. Needless to say, we were a little embarrassed when the woman started telling us the dessert tasted like it had liquor in it. I could go on and on, but the point is simply this. Occasionally, but very rarely, we ended up with a perfect place, perfect people, and a perfect seminar. I finally realized that one of the reasons these situations left me impatient and behaving badly was because I was being idealistic, not realistic. I don't plan for the future, but I do remember that Jesus said that in this world we will have to deal with tribulation and trials and distress and frustration. These things are part of life on this earth for the believer as well as the unbeliever. But the all the mishaps in the world cannot harm us if we will remain in the love of God, displaying the fruit of the Spirit. Update. We still travel a lot, and after 25 years of traveling in ministry, we still have inconveniences and mishaps at most locations. During the last two conferences, when returning to our room after an evening session, our keys would not open the door. I have yet to figure out why the computer system at the hotel changes the keys while the patron is still in the room, but it happens frequently. We wait in the hallway while someone goes to the desk to get new keys, and of course, they always apologize. We, we rarely get upset now about imperfections of our journeys because we know that it is part of everyday life. Our job is not to control our circumstances, but to respond toward them in a godly way. Patience, power to endure. Clothe yourselves, therefore, as God's own chosen ones, his own picked representatives who are purified and holy and well loved by God himself, by putting on behavior marked by tender-hearted pity and mercy, kind feeling, a lowly opinion of yourselves, gentle ways, and patience, which is tireless and long-suffering, and has the power to endure whatever comes with good temper. Colossians 3:12. I turn to the scripture often to remind me of what kind of behavior I should be displaying in all situations. I remind myself that patience is not my ability to wait, but my ability to keep a good attitude while I wait. Patience is brought out by trials. Envelop in or encounter trials of any sort or fall into various temptations. Be assured and understand that the trial and proving of your faith bring out endurance and steadfastness and patience. But let endurance and steadfastness and patience have full play and do a thorough work, so that you may be people perfectly and fully developed with no defects, lacking in nothing. James 1:2-4. Patience is a fruit of the Spirit. See Galatians 5:22. And is deposited in the spirit of every born again person. The display of or manifestation of patience by his people is very important to the Lord. He wants other people to see his character through his children. Chapter 1 in the book of James teaches us that when we have become perfect, we will be lacking in nothing. The devil cannot control a patient man. James 1 also teaches us that we should rejoice when we find ourselves involved in difficult situations, knowing that the method God uses to bring out patience in us is by what the New King James Version calls various trials. I have found in my own life that various trials did eventually bring out patience in me. But first, they brought out a lot of other things that were not godly traits. Things like pride, anger, rebellion, self-pity, complaining, and godly traits and godly traits. Things like pride, anger, rebellion, self-pity, complaining, and many others. Okay, ungodly traits, that should be. It seems that these other things must be faced and dealt with more before patience can come forth, trial or inconvenience. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the people became impatient, depressed, much discouraged because of the trials of the way. Numbers 21:4. If you remember, an impatient attitude was one of the wilderness mentalities and kept the Israelites wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Were their trials that terrible, or were there simply inconveniences? I am sure some were worse than others, but quite often we murmur about things that a more mature person would pay no attention to at all. How could these people possibly be ready to go into the promised land and drive off the current occupants so they could possess the land if they could not even remain patient and steadfast during a little inconvenience? Fruit of patience in you. The more you resist him, the longer the process will take. Learn to respond patiently in all kinds of trials, and you will find yourself living a quality of life that is not just endured, but enjoyed to the full. The importance of patience and endurance. For you have need of steadfast patience and endurance, so that you may perform and fully accomplish the will of God, and thus receive and carry away and enjoy to the full what is promised. Hebrews 10:36. This scripture tells us that without patience and endurance, we will not receive the promises of God. And Hebrews 6:12 tells us that it is only through faith and patience that we inherit the promises of God. The proud man runs in the strength of his own flesh and tries to make things happen in his own timing. Pride says, I'm ready now. Humility says, God knows best and he will not be late. Copy is kind of wrong. I can't read this. Humility says God. Okay, that's copy from the other page. A humble man waits patiently. He actually has a reverential fear of moving in the strength of his own flesh. But a proud man tries one thing after another, all to no avail. A straight line is not always the shortest distance to a goal. There is a way that seems right to a man and appears straight before him, but at the end of it is the way of death. Proverbs 16:25. We must learn that in the spiritual realm, sometimes a straight line is not the shortest distance between us and where we want to be. It may just be the shortest distance to destruction. We must learn to be patient and wait on the Lord, even if it seems that there are multitudes of unhappy, unfulfilled Christians in the world, simply because they are busy trying to make something happen instead of waiting patiently for God to bring things to pass in His own time and His own way. When you are trying to wait on God, the devil will pound your mind continuously, demanding that you do something. He wants to move you in fleshly zeal and action because he knows that the flesh profits nothing. See John 6:63 and Romans 13:14. As we have seen, impatience is a sign of pride, and the only answer to pride is humility. Humble yourselves and wait on the Lord. Therefore, humble yourselves, lower yourselves in your own estimation under the mighty hand of God, that in due time He may exalt you. This phrase, lower yourself in your own estimation, does not mean to think badly of yourself. It simply means don't think you can solve all your problems on your own. Instead of pridefully taking matters into your own hands, we must learn to humble ourselves under God's mighty hand. When He knows that the time is right, He will exalt us and lift us up. As we wait on God and refuse to move in fleshly zeal, there is a dying to self that takes place. We begin to die to our own ways and our own timing to become alive to God's will and way for us. We should always be promptly obedient to do whatever God tells us to do. But we should also have a godly fear of fleshly pride. Remember, it is pride that is the root of impatience. A proud man says, "Please don't make me wait for anything. I deserve everything immediately." When you are tempted to become frustrated and impatient, I recommend that you begin to say, "Lord, I want your will in your timing. I do not want to be ahead of you, nor do I want to be behind you. Help me, Father, to wait patiently on you." That's the end of chapter 20. Next week, we will read chapter 21. My behavior may be wrong, but it's not my fault. Wow, that sounds like a good one. Thank you for reading with me, and I will see you next week. Have a wonderful week.